Be former Obama Economic Council Chair and Vance Ginn, former Trump White House economist. Love this panel. Can't get more bipartisan than this, although I know you economists say it all comes down to the numbers. So, Austin, you tell me, spending, investment, same thing to a lot of Americans who see that they're likely on the hook for this. So which is it? Are Americans going to see their taxes go up to pay for this or not?
No, I don't think. I looked at the report that you're describing, and the closing of the tax gap, that is making people pay taxes that they're supposed to have paid, and we're now going to have greater enforcement. That's not really a traditional definition of a tax increase, making people pay the taxes that they owed and they were cheating not to pay. So I think you
are you talking about the corporate tax rate?
Examine the terminology.
Which taxes are you referring to, just so we're clear, so Vince can respond? Which part? What taxes?
There's
on
closing
whom?
the taxes. There's increased tax enforcement, which some of the people who
on
are not paying their taxes make less than $400,000.
This is important. On individuals
both.
Or corporations? Both.
It's on tax enforcement.
All right, Vance, dig in.
Well, I think this is a massive tax hike on Americans. When you look at those reports, it shows that about 2/3 of the tax hikes would be on those making less than $400,000 a year. I mean, a big part of this, a huge tax hike, is raising the corporate income tax, the minimum tax, to 15%, which will then be passed along in the form of higher taxes to everyone else. You know, that's where a lot of the reports coming from. And I don't really think that we're going to see a huge increase in taxes from what Austin's mentioning here, Sandra. So I think that we look at these different things that's going on. This is bad for America. It's going to raise taxes, raise inflation, and we need to kill this bill.
All right. So the Bipartisan Joint Committee on Taxation, as you just heard, says U.S. manufacturers are already struggling with inflation, supply chain disruptions, and a slowing economy. The Wall Street Journal editorial board also, Austin, says that this is the Schumer-Manchin tax increase on everyone, saying that the corporate tax rate ultimately falls on some combination of workers, shareholders, and customers. Raise the corporate tax rate and you're cutting wages and salaries for workers. No surprise, that's exactly what the Joint Committee on Taxation found. Average tax rates will increase for nearly every income category in 2023 under the bill. The question is, why would you want anyone to have to pay more taxes in an environment of sky-high inflation? This country's already struggling. That will continue to hurt the lower and middle class the most. Austin?
That's a mistaken interpretation of what it says. It does not show that taxes go up. The argument that you're describing is if corporate taxes were to rise, would they pass that on to the workers in the form of lower wages, not of higher taxes? We had this discussion when Donald Trump cut the corporate tax. By their logic, the wage of workers should have increased, and it did not. Wage growth was actually slower after they cut taxes. So the argument about who bears the burden of corporate tax cuts or increases is a long-term issue and is not resolved.
Okay, so as an economist, do you believe
is resolved is this cuts deficits by $250 billion. That's the main thing that's coming out of that. So it's strange to me that you're not saying the main finding of the study.
Okay, so according to what you have seen, will this ultimately bring down inflation? That's the question. Vance, I'll get you in here. I saw you reacting to what Austin was saying, but this is from the Penn Wharton review of this. Their budget model says the act would very slightly increase inflation until 2024 and decrease inflation thereafter. These point estimates are statistically indistinguishable from zero, thereby indicating low confidence that this legislation will have any impact on inflation. Vance?
Well, I think that's right. And, you know, what Austin was saying, I'm glad to hear that he's at least interested in the deficit and debt, because it is a major problem that we have right now that we need to focus on. And even if you look into the Obamacare extension of the subsidies, they're only doing that through 2025. But if you extended that over the full decade, it would be less than $100 billion reduction in the debt. So, I mean, this really is a more tax and spend sort of policies that we've seen over the last year and a half. These progressive policies have really put us in the situation we're in now. We need to be rolling pulling back a lot of the regulations that have been impeding and stifling economic growth. We need to be cutting spending and cutting taxes to free up those resources, because right now what we have is too much money chasing too few goods, which is this Inflation and Recession Act is really what I've been calling it. This is not a good situation, and it's not the direction that we need to go.
So I'll give you a final word on this. Why do this if it's going to have an indistinguishable effect on inflation? Isn't the point to bring prices down? It's actually going to lead to higher prices, this study says, in the first 2 years.
Well, that study said zero. That's a controversial finding. There are others who say it would go down. The thing that I would point out is that the intention of the bill is to reduce prices in specific areas. So looking at grand inflation overall in the economy will tend to cloud the fact that it reduces the price of prescription drugs, makes health care more affordable, and is trying to get energy prices down, which gas prices have been falling for 7 straight weeks.
I think people want to see their grocery and their energy prices go, home heating bills go down, et cetera. Thanks to both of you for coming on. Obviously, there's a huge debate there, and Joe Manchin is on board and says this will not affect your taxes. So we'll have more on that coming up. Thanks to our econ panel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you.